to another episode of the Modern Manifestation Podcast. I'm your host, Bree Brown, a lettuce-hating, wine-loving, curses like a sailor, recovering perfectionist. Having thrived in a male-dominated, commission-based industry, I'm passionate about helping women boldly pursue their life goals. In this space, we build confidence with our mindset, manifestation, and spirituality. I believe that your life manifests as a result of who you are, not what you do, and that your personality creates your personal reality. Join this growing community to increase your net worth by increasing your self-worth. Now let's jump into today's topic. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Modern Manifestation Podcast. In the previous episode, we touched on how creativity can help you break through the terror barrier. So today, we're diving deeper into that subject and talking about how creativity can truly bring magic into our lives. And I know it sounds a little gimmicky, but bear with me. Creativity isn't just a helpful tool. It's one of the most powerful tools we have when it comes to manifestation. So I am dedicating an entire episode to it, and to do so, I am drawing inspiration from the book I mentioned in the previous episode. It's the book Big Magic: Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. Yes, I'm obsessed with this book. Yes, I'm obsessed with her writing. And for good reason. I'm hoping you walk away from this episode understanding why, and hopefully you go check out her book yourself. So while I was thinking about this concept of creativity, I realized I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Liz already wrote an entire book on the subject and did so beautifully. I'm just going to lean into some of my favorite insights from her book and how they connect to creating the life you want. And if you want to check it out, I will have her book linked in the show notes. And in case you missed the previous episode, Liz Gilbert is a best-selling author of several books, but most notably her book Eat, Pray, Love, which also became a movie. And in her book Big Magic, Liz talks a lot about unlocking the courage to live creatively, despite your fear. And she really breaks down creativity into 6 elements: courage, enchantment, permission, persistence, trust, and divinity. And throughout the book, she encourages us to follow curiosity over perfection, to take action without waiting for permission, and to recognize that ideas just might be living things looking for collaborators that are willing to bring them to fruition. So, this book is fantastic for anyone that has a creative streak or anyone that's looking to embark on a new idea. And this book had a beautiful spiritual undertone to it that I also just really loved. It's a gentle, powerful call to stop waiting for fear to disappear and instead to start creating anyway. So let's jump into one of the stories that Liz talks about in Big Magic, where it really describes the act of creativity as a very vulnerable process. So Liz met a guy who had a job as a mall security guard. And before becoming a security guard, this individual had served several years as a Navy SEAL. And we're talking about someone who had walked through some of the most intense, high-pressure situations imaginable. And here's why this story stuck with me. This man, what we would say is the embodiment of discipline, bravery, grit, high-stakes situations, confided in Liz that what he really wanted was to write a novel. But he hadn't done anything with that. So let that sink in for a moment. A Navy SEAL, trained for combat, able to withstand torture, willing to jump out of helicopters, trained for life and death situations, who risked their life on a daily basis, was terrified to admit that he had a dream to write fiction. This former SEAL wanted to write, but never thought he could. He was afraid to start. And that is the heart of Big Magic. Creativity is vulnerable. It requires a kind of bravery that even a Navy SEAL can find intimidating. Because creativity asks us to reveal who we really are. It's not an external persona, it's an internal exposure. And that's why it's so powerful, and that's why Brené Brown asks us to have courage, to be vulnerable. And I love this story so much because as people, we have a tendency to put people in boxes, right? So if we think of someone that was in the special forces, we might think of strength and discipline and maybe even brutality. But we often fail to remember that they're people too. and that same person could also be an artist. And they too might be a creative individual or an influencer, even if they don't look so on the outside. Creativity lives in all of us. And even the toughest among us are not immune to the fact that fear almost always comes with expressing ourselves. So in a lot of ways, while a Navy SEAL is extremely brave, so is the artist who shows up on the street with their artwork hoping that someone finds it valuable. It's a reminder that no matter how courageous we are in so many aspects of our lives, creativity will almost always ask us to be a little braver, a little more open, a little more honest, a little more vulnerable. So if you ever told yourself, I'm not creative, that's not for people like me, this is your proof that you are, and it is. So for the 1,000,001 reasons why I love Liz's book, Big Magic, I think the reason I love it the most is probably because it's a guide to living on the other side of that terror barrier. She recognizes what it is, and then she talks about creativity as a tool to move through it in a really beautiful exploration of what it means to live a creative life, not just in the arts, but in a way we live, love, build, and become, regardless of who you are, regardless of what it is that you're trying to build, to create. And when we follow our creative sparks, we start to free ourselves. So that individual that was the Navy SEAL, when she started talking with him, he all of a sudden started to reframe his own identity. Was he a Navy SEAL that had experienced combat, or could he also be a writer? Maybe a more softer version of himself. Changing that identity, giving himself permission to become creative, allowing himself to step into the vulnerability of knowing that he would have to tell some of his former colleagues that he's now writing fiction. All of that allowed him to become a more freer and true and authentic version of himself. We become more intentional, more grounded, and more in alignment with source when we lean into our creativity. And from that place, we get to welcome new possibilities into our awareness. We get to manifest a new reality based on a new set of circumstances. So many good things can come from it. And yet so many of us still have reservations about it. Liz defines a creative life as a life that is driven more strongly by curiosity than by fear. So let's lean into our curiosity despite the fear and find out what's on the other side of that. Let's stay open to new ideas, be curious about what they're telling us, and then be bold enough to pursue them. And if that's not enough motivation for you to pursue the ideas, bear with me as we get a little spiritual here. It's another reason why I love this book so much. It's extremely unique. It's creativity from a perspective that I frankly just hadn't heard of before. And her perspective really made me think long and hard about the things that even I had put off. And it's one of the only books I found on creativity that talks about ideas as if they're alive. Yes, alive. Like they are floating creatures circling the universe, looking for someone who's ready to receive them, and then to manifest them into reality. And that personification of inspiration makes creativity a very strong call to action. Because if you think of an idea like a potential partner, the idea might flirt with you, ask you for your time, show up for you. But if you never reciprocate, if you never show any interest back, they will eventually move on. Inspiration is loyal to action, not potential. So when an idea visits you, what if you treat it like a sacred invitation? Because if you don't say yes, it will find someone else. So focus on that really big idea when it comes to you, because if you don't, you might miss it. So tune into that great idea when it fires you up, because the idea will find someone else to manifest it into our physical reality. And while that sounds like a quirky idea, I know, bear with me for a second, experience has told me how true this feels. I can't even count on two hands how many times I've had a great idea, never took action, and then someone else in another part of the world creates that exact thing. And while there's some ideas I wasn't passionate about, there are several that had me kicking myself. You're given the opportunity to birth an idea, but that idea won't stick around and die on the vine if you choose not to. So if nothing else, Big Magic can help us take action, because these brilliant ideas, it makes you feel like there's a deadline. Like you need to decide whether or not the idea is an opportunity worth missing, whether or not you would kick yourself if you did. And that you might not be the first or only person that this idea visits. So there's that sense of needing to act quickly. Because if you don't, it disappears or finds someone else. And that idea wants to exist. It's looking for a collaborator. And while you might not be the only person it visits, you might be the best one to birth it now. And again, while a quirky idea, this book resonated with me so much because this kind of creative energy, an energy that wants to exist, to manifest, to co-create. There's this phenomenon I learned about several years ago that makes me even more certain of this energy. And it's called simultaneous invention or multiple discovery. And what that is the idea that the same innovation, insight, or idea can emerge independently of one another in different places at or around the same time, even when the individuals or groups have had no contact with one another. Or, if Elizabeth Gilbert were to describe it, she might say when ideas want to come to fruition so badly that they court multiple people at once in a race to exist. So while the concept that ideas are alive sounds out there, history offers some compelling evidence that there might be something to this. A few examples. Calculus was developed independently by both Isaac Newton and, I'm going to butcher their name, but Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, I think. Newton developed his form of calculus first in the mid-1660s, and Leibniz began working on his version of calculus in 1673. So let's call it not quite, like 8 to 10 years after. And Leibniz published his first paper in 1684. And Newton, despite being quote-unquote the first to use calculus that we know of, didn't publish his work until 3 years later. Same idea, almost the same time, two different individuals who did not discuss the idea together and yet manifested the same concept in terms of history at the same time, within 8 years of one another, considering all of time in which calculus did not exist is pretty insane. Another example is the theory of evolution by natural selection. This concept was actually formulated independently by both Charles Darwin as well as Alfred Russel Wallace. And Alfred published his findings first, which prompted Darwin to do the same when he realized that someone else was pursuing the same kind of study and didn't want to get left behind. And in the end, Darwin's On the Origin of Species was far more successful, so that's the one that we remember. But it's interesting that Alfred was actually the one that published it first. And Darwin had no idea, but then felt pressured to do the same because he realized that someone else was on his tails, or vice versa. Another one's the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell and Elisha Gray both filed patents for devices that transmitted speech electronically on the exact same day, February 14th, 1876. And then the fourth example I will mention is the Stone Age, and I'm going to butcher this name as well, but I don't remember how to say it, and we're just going to wing it because I didn't have time to Google it before I hit record. The Oldowan tools. Whatever. Oldowan. Feel free to go look it up. While learning about these tools in archaeology, there were several times in human history where groups of Homo sapiens sapiens independently came across the same information in different parts of the world around the exact same time in history. The discovery of fire, carving of tools for utility, and even the beginning of the agricultural revolution. There's no possible way that these communities at that time, prior to mail, prior to telephones, could have been in contact. And yet during the exact same time in history, we see multiple tribes, multiple groups of people throughout the world, separated by oceans, having the exact same ideas around the same time in history. So, it begs the question, is Liz Gilbert onto something? Let's get playful. Maybe ideas really do float in the ether, just looking for willing collaborators. So if you do have an idea, allow yourself to feel chosen. Allow yourself to have a moment of gratitude for something or someone recognizing that you might be the perfect person to breathe it into life, and then decide whether or not you want to. So, what does this mean for you? If ideas really are willing collaborators, that spark you're feeling might just be something the world deeply needs. And you're the one that's being asked to bring it to life. So tune in. Maybe that inspiration might really be the next telephone, the calculus, or even Amazon. And if you want to co-create your reality with the universe, then follow those nudges and don't delay. Lean into that sudden spark of a new project, a business idea, a move, a book, a financial trade. That's your magic trying to co-create for you. And then, when you say yes to an idea, allow the fear that'll come to come and go. Don't let it stop you. The more you embrace that innovative side to you, the more your fear response will get quieter. Fear almost always follows creativity because creativity demands change. And as we know, Change is scary. Change creates a fear response within our amygdala, but create anyway. Activate your prefrontal cortex by taking action or getting creative so it can inhibit the expression of that fear. And when you're faced with a new possibility and you get really excited, don't let fear keep you frozen. Because courage comes not in the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going in the presence of it. It is a vulnerable thing to acknowledge fear and proceed anyway. That is true bravery. And as Gabby Bernstein says, you can do hard things. Every time you act in alignment with your inner magic, you rewrite the story your subconscious is clinging to. You teach your body that it's safe to grow. You teach your brain that it's safe to change. You show your creativity, or your inner muse, that you're a willing collaborator. There's no version of creating the life you want that does not involve discomfort. And the more you avoid it, the more you push the things you want away. So think of discomfort as the compass. When you notice discomfort, it means you're on the right path. It means you're headed in the right direction. And if you're waiting to feel 100% ready before you launch the business, change the job, write the book, end the relationship, move to another city, you will be waiting forever. You'll never feel 100% ready. One of my favorite quotes from Big Magic is when Liz says, "Argue for your limitations, and you get to keep them." I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Argue for your limitations, and you get to keep them. This is your big magic moment. You do not need permission to begin. You do not need to be perfect. You don't even need to be fearless. You just have to be willing. So I ask you, what's the idea that's been tapping you on the shoulder? What's the nudge that won't go away? What's the thing you keep telling yourself you're not ready for? Maybe it's a business, a podcast, or maybe just being honest with someone about what you want. That's your big magic moment. And yes, it'll probably scare you. That's the price of admission. Every time you choose creativity over fear, you show your brain and your nervous system that it's safe to grow and that you're ready to co-create life with the universe, to prove to yourself that you can create even in the presence of fear, even with the terror barrier. And from that place, you become a true collaborator in your own life. So consider whether or not you're asking for expansion in your life, but you're resisting the very discomfort that the expansion requires. This is the work, to show up, to trust the nudge, to create. If you're tuning into this, then you were born for big magic. Don't let fear convince you otherwise. Be bold, be your own creative muse, and be more curious than you are afraid. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will catch y'all in the next episode. Until then, go out there and manifest some miracles. I hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. If you want to check out the show notes, head over to www.themodernmanifestation.com/blog. If you're loving this podcast, please drop me a review, share this episode with a loved one, and follow me on Instagram @modernmanifestation. I love y'all so much, and thanks for listening.